Today our group want to present about economic growth between Malaysia and Brunei. So before we start, let me introduce our group member. The first one is Nordamia Farhana Binti Ahmad Asomi, Firatu Izzah Binti Sarbini, Jocelyn Misha Anasili, and me, Sophie Noy Anna Edi. Okay, let's start with the introduction first. Okay. Malaysia is the fourth largest economy in the Southeast Asia and has always shown a strong performance in recent years. This is due to increased global demand for electronic products, increased demand for commodities such as oil and gas, improved labor market, pro-cycle budgets, and adequate infrastructure spending. However, declining government spending, lower public and private investment has reduced economic growth to 4.4% in 2019. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, growth has reversed sharply to negative 5.6% in 2020, but has rebounded at 3.5% in 2021. The latest forecast from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) expect another strong rebound at 6% in 2022 and a stabilization at 5.7% in 2023. It is subject to a global economic recovery after the pandemic. Malaysia's economic position among Islamic countries is the seventh largest in terms of GDP. The economic system in Malaysia is basically an independent economic system that is less fair, with government control for the interest of the country and for realignment of the country's wealth resources. It also focus on trade, investment, manufacturing, and services. The main sources of Malaysia's rapid economic development is the result of a large part of its rich natural resources in agriculture and forestry. Brunei is a small and rich country with a mixed foreign and domestic entrepreneurship, government regulation, and welfare measures and village traditions. These resources to almost entirely supported by exporters of crude oil and natural gas, based on revenue from the petroleum sector, which account for more than half of GDP. The Brunei government also provide all medical services and provide foods and housing subsidies. The government has shown progress in its fundamental policy to diversify the economy away from oil and gas. In 1999, Brunei growth was estimated at 2.5% due to higher oil price in the second half. Brunei is also the third largest oil producer in Southeast Asia, with average about 180 million barrels per day, equivalent 29,000 milliliters per day. It also the ninth largest producer of liquefied natural gas in the world. We come to the next part, which is economic growth. In this section, I will explain generally about meaning of economic growth and economic growth between Malaysia and Brunei. Economic growth is an increase in the value of economic goods and services, thus generating more profit for businesses that give companies that capital to invest and hire more employees. As more jobs are created, income also increase. Example, when consumers have more money to buy additional products and services, as well as purchase, it can drive higher growth. Due to this, all countries want to positive economic growth. This makes economic growth the most observed economic indicator. The way in which economic growth works is by using the gross domestic product method. the gross domestic product method is the best way to measure economic growth for a country because it takes into account the overall economic output in the country for sale. GDP includes all goods and services produced by businesses in the country for sale. It does not matter it is sold in the locally or abroad. Economic analysis has studied the economic growth of the country to find out the level of businesses cycle the economy is in. The best phase of economic growth is expansion. In the quarter 2022, the Malaysian economy recorded a positive growth of 5.0% compared to the quarter of 2021 of 3.6%. Increased growth is supported mainly by improving domestic demand due to the easing of containment measure. The increase has also marked recovery in the job market with employment rate continuing to decline to 4.1% when compared to 2021. The employment rate down by 4.3%, as well as continued policy support. Stronger external demand is in the midst of a continuous upward cycle in the global technology, as well as providing a further boost to the Malaysia economic growth. Brunei economy shrank to 1.4% in the 2022 quarter, after a revised 1.8% fall in the third quarter. This indicates a contraction in the fifth consecutive quarter amid disruption caused by COVID-19. Fixed investment fell to a softer pace of negative 18.8% from negative 29.5% in the third quarter, while household consumption was sluggish by 1.2% from 13.3%, and government spending moderated to 6.5% from 8.2%. Positively, as export increased by 17.2% compared to 4.5% in the third quarter, while the import sector increased to 12.8%, which was weaker than 28.3%. Every quarter, Brunei economy grew by 9.5%, also following this line to 3.2% in the third quarter of 2022.
Alright, my name is Jocelyn and I will present about Malaysia and Brunei of economic growth data from reliable sources for 5 years, which is for 2017 until 2021. Firstly, I will present about the Malaysia of economic growth data. Based on the figure above, we can see that in 2018, Malaysia economic growth is $356.78 billion, and for 2017 is $319.11 billion. Clearly that Malaysia economic growth in 2018 has increased more than the 2017. After that, economic growth rate for 2018 has increased by 2.43% from 2017. And after that, economic growth for 2019 has increased by 1.81% from 2018. However, in 2020, Malaysia economic growth has decreased by 7.74% for 2019. This is generally we know that this is due to the COVID-19 pandemic that was hit Malaysia at the time, which have caused the movement control order to be implemented on 18 March 2020. This situation was made increase in unemployment among Malaysia. at that time directly was affected the decline the country economic lag by 16% in the second quarters of 2020. After that, in the years of 2021, Malaysia economic growth was returned to normal by increasing the economic rate by 10.56% from 2020. Here, this is the impact of the success of the services sectors, which is the tourism sectors and manufacturing of products or services continues, was encouraged to the Malaysia economic growth in 2021. After that, this is Malaysia GDP per capita. Based on the figure above, we can see that the change in the increase and decrease that occur in the period for 5 years. Malaysia GDP per capita for the year 2019 amount to $11,380, which was an increase by 10.92% from 2017. After that, in the year 2019, GDP per capita is amount to $11,433. There is also an increase of 0.46% from 2018 just now. Then GDP per capita in 2020 is amount to $10,412, which has been decreased of 8.93% from 2019. This decrease was due to the some country have experienced a decline in the key sectors such as services in 2020. This sector has reached a total of 57.7% of the Malaysia economy, which was caused a difference that is down from 2019, which is 6.2%. The tourist industry was a major contributor that was affected at the time. Among the countries that was involved in the decline in the key sector such as Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, Sabah, Pahang and Johor. However, after the experiencing a decline in the 2020, Malaysia GDP per capita managed to increase by $11,371, equivalent to a 9.21% increase from 2020. Next, we can see that there's a figure about the annual change in GDP growth in percent. Based on the figure above, in the year 2018, Malaysia economic growth is declining and has been recorded at 4.7%. This is due to the following: declining private consumption. At the same time, was declined external demand amid the increasingly gloomy picture of the global economy. After that, in the year 2019, Malaysia has also experienced a decline. There is a GDP growth rate of 4.44%, equivalent to decrease of 0.4% from 2019. However, in the year 2020, Malaysia GDP growth rate experiences a significant decline where it was recorded negative 5.65, equivalent to a decrease of 10.9% from 2019. This is because of Malaysia is unable to properly implement activities that contribute to the economic growth, such as services, manufacturing, construction, agriculture, and also the tourism as well as mining and quarrying due to the COVID-19 pandemic. After some of the states in Malaysia try to take action in increasing their economic activity in the year 2021, then the GDP growth rate at the time has been 3.13% of 8.78% increase has occurred in the year 2021 from the decline in 2020. Finally, this is the Malaysia GDP annual growth rate. Based on the figure above, we can see that the outlook of the Malaysia economic growth in the first quarter of 2022 is an increase of 5.5%. This is because the key sectors that has contributed to the country economic growth are playing their role smoothly due to the declining unemployment rate and making the domestic demand improve since the economic activity continues to recover. Next, this is a Brunei economic growth data for 5 years, same as the Malaysia just now. Based on the figure above, this is economic growth in Brunei is almost fully supported by the export of the crude oil and natural gas, which are natural resources available in that country. Using the revenue from the petroleum sector has led to more than half of the GDP that achieved by the Brunei. Based on the figure above, Brunei experiences as a slowdown in economic growth in the year 2017. But the impact of the drop in the oil price at the time is the lowest level has been a gap to Brunei GDP becoming declining. However, Brunei GDP in the year 2018 is very good from 2017. That was increase in economic growth is amount to $13.57 billion, equivalent to increase of the 11.87% from 2017. Next, in the year 2019, Brunei GDP is amount to $13.47 billion, and that has decreased by 0.72% from the year 2018. In the year 2020, Brunei GDP is amount to $12.01 billion, and that was still with the decline towards to the economic growth of the 10.87% from 2019. This is because more than 99% of the electricity that Brunei has generated is based on the fossil fuels. Therefore, the electricity generated by the energy has been renewable and accounted for less than 1%. Brunei GDP for 2021 is amount to $14.1 billion, equivalent to the increase of 16.66% from 2020. However, Brunei GDP in 2021 is fell at the fastest rate in the 5 years due to the economic recession that caused of oil and gas production to decline. And this situation caused the economic growth in 2021 is 1.6% only. Then, either in the economic recovery to the Brunei. This is same issue as the Malaysia just now. That was an impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Alright, next this is per capita and also annual growth rate for Brunei. Based on the figure above, we can see that the per capita for Brunei GDP for the year 2017 is amount to $28,572 billion, and annual growth rate is recorded at 5.20%. Then, in the year 2018, Brunei GDP was recorded $31,628, equivalent has increased by 10.7% from the year of 2017. Next, in the year 2019, per capita Brunei GDP was decreased by 1.72% from 2018. The decline also occurred in the 2020, where the Brunei GDP per capita was record $22,443, equivalent to decrease of 11.72% from 2019. Brunei experienced a declining per capita in the year 2020 due to the declining population as a result of the COVID-19 attack at the same time. At that time, this situation affect a lack of the manpower, such as labor, to carry the economic activity. Finally, Brunei GDP per capita for the year 2021 is amount to $31,722, which was increase of the 15.59% from the year 2020 just now. This is a result of the continued workforce for after the management from the COVID-19 pandemic that occurred in the year 2020, Brunei is now in the theories to recover back their economic growth and by continually, smoothly, and gradually using the various means that will support their economic growth. Next, this is a annual change and the GDP growth rate of Brunei for 5 years. There are several factors that has caused the increasing and decreasing difference in the growth rate that occur in the year by year. The annual percentage growth rate of GDP against market price is based on the fixed local currency. In the year 2017, Brunei GDP growth rate increased by 1.33% and has increased by 3.81% from the year 2016. Currently, Brunei economic growth is still as usual before the impact of the drop in oil price and also the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The GDP growth rate in 2018 was 0.5% and experiences a rate decline of the 1.28% from 2017. The decline is because gas production is a result in the rate was decline of 1.2% to BND 4.511 billion in the third quarters of 2018. On 25 January 2019, there was a decline in the oil and gas sector that was recorded to 2.4%. In the year 2020, Brunei GDP growth rate is 1.13% and there is a decline of the 2.74% from the year 2019. This decline is real GDP indicate that export decreased at the time due to the less demand from the other country for the economic resources produced by the Brunei. Finally, Brunei GDP growth rate for the year 2021 is 1.61% and experienced a substantial decline of the 2.74% from the year 2020. This because our Brunei experiences weaker and inefficient oil and gas production at the time. This situation occurs due to the resurgence of the COVID-19 infection in the August 2021, which greatly contribute to the country's economic impact. In addition, the forecast for the increase in the rate of the GDP economic growth in the quarters of the Brunei for the year 2022 is expected to grow by 3.7%. This is because the economic growth that takes place in the 2021 is expected to be based more broadly in this year. This by the support from the oil and gas and service sectors in the Brunei is now growing to encourage the Brunei economic growth. In conclusion, that we have seen just now between the two countries of the GDP for 5 years just now. This is because each country has the obstacles to the development of sector that drive the country economic growth. So, in my opinion, economic growth in Malaysia is better than the downturn that have often happened in the Brunei. It is a very significant based on the GDP against the increase and decrease that occur from years by years. However, the forecast for 2022 has shown the both of the country will get a boost to the country GDP economic growth.
My name is Farha and I will presenting the part for effect and recommendation. There are the effect of low economic growth in Malaysia and also Brunei. The prospect for a more robust economic recovery in Malaysia are being clouded by a number of uncertainties. The low economic growth issue affect to the economy whether in its living standard, unemployment, and productivity. Firstly, the shift to endemic phase of COVID-19 undoubtedly increased domestic economic activities, but the economics gain from the easing of restrictions on mobility of people and goods may be lower than expected. Malaysia growth probably be adversely affected by the external conditions despite higher market prices for some of its exports such as crude oil and palm oil.
Then, inflation is already creeping upward, especially in food prices. Such inflationary pressure are likely to be aggravated if the ringgit weaken further due to higher interest rates in United States. Inflation is also appropriate because price hikes, especially for meats and vegetables, have become an issue of public concern and debate. Then, the lower economic growth also caused the financial crisis in Malaysia. Lockdown in Malaysia because of COVID-19 have been relatively been longer and stricter, and this has caused structural damage to business, employment, income, and saving, which affected recovery prospects. As for the Brunei country, Brunei facing more losses in downstream sector because of slow economic growth. The poor economic performance in 2021 was further exacerbated by revenue losses in the downstream oil and gas sector, which fell on percent year on year. Since petrochemical company Hengi Industries began operations in the final quarter of 2019, Brunei has been relying on the downstream sector to offset losses in the energy sector over past 2 years. Then, risks to the sector can arise from unexpected disruptions in oil and gas productions, geopolitical risks, and a slowdown in major global economies, possibly amplified by ongoing trade tensions and the coronavirus pandemic. If the oil price war will happen again, it will lower oil and gas prices further, which will adversely affect the Bruneian economy. Lastly, weakening economic diversification efforts that can dampen in the medium to long-term economic prospects. Recent progress in diversification efforts have enhanced employment prospects, growth potentials, and exports, but a slowdown in structural reform and economic diversification poses risks. And here is the recommendation for Malaysia and Brunei to improve their economy better. Firstly, Malaysia should using infrastructure to spur economic growth. Infrastructure spending occurs when a local, state, or federal government spends money to build or repair the physical structures and facilities needed for commerce and society as whole to thrive. For example, infrastructure includes roads, bridges, ports, and more. Economies who favor infrastructure spending as an economic catalyst argue that having top-notch infrastructure increases productivity by enabling business to operate as efficiently as possible. Then, to improve the economic better, must increase the productivity. Malaysia's workers must be willing to work in all sectors. For example, if each worker increase productivity by 15 minutes a day, they will get 65 extra hours of productivity per worker per year. This will help the workers' organizations' output and Malaysia's economy tremendously, and it also helps to reduce over-reliance and foreign workers. Then, Malaysia government can also provide investment incentive to firms as an addition to the implementation of a budget deficit in the country to further enhance economic growth. The increase in money supply by the central bank also can restore the economic recessions in Malaysia. Here are the recommendations for Brunei. Brunei must be improve the governance and public service to increase economic growth. Ensuring accountable and transparent governance will be an important driver of social equity, inclusivity, and political stability. This means the free flow of information between government, business, and citizens, and a strong regulatory system that ensures independence of fairness in its provisions. The government will also continue to update and reform regulations that enforce global standards and that promote a more conducive business environment. Also derive the economic and infrastructure development to increase economic growth. The government must continue to improve land, sea, and air connectivity to boost productivity as well as the uninterrupted unlimited supply of water and electricity to homes and business. Then lastly, developing a productive and business environment. The government is looking to prioritize sectors to spearhead economic development. These are downstream oil and gas, food tourism, and information and communication technology. The government can promote a local macro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, which constitute 90% of total enterprises, to be more export-oriented, to increase productivity and competitiveness. That's all for the effect and recommendation. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Farha Binti and I will presenting the solution and the conclusion. Okay. Solution for Malaysia. Number one, Malaysia need to focus on the expansionary fiscal policy. First, by cutting taxes, it can help to increase disposable income and encouraging spending. The effect of lowering taxes will increase the budget deficit and lead to higher borrowing. Lower tax rates is a demand-side argument because it helps to boost saving and investment, which will also increase the productive capacity of the economy. Number two, by influence the rate of economic growth can be through the expansionary monetary policy. It is stated that by cutting the interest rate, it tends to boost the domestic demand interest, have a direct effect on the consumer behavior in everyday life because when the rate is low, borrowing becomes cheaper. Larger purchases on credit become more affordable, such as mortgages, loans, and credit card expenses. However, higher rates also benefit savers who get more favorable interest on deposit accounts. And solution for Brunei, number one, they need to create a goal to the accomplishment of its highly educated and skilled people. Nowadays, technology is the main important knowledge to conquer the business. Business need to encourage that the workforce is future ready through continuous reskilling to meet the industry demand. Industry demand all this research in the fields of arts and culture, social science, technology, and engineering. Number two, be an open and globally connected economy by showing more commitment to participate in open trade policies with its regional and global partners. Trade is known as the central to ending global poverty. Countries that are open to international trade are highly to grow rapidly and improve higher income and more opportunities to their people. There are also distributional consequences of increasing the trade. Economies can gain enormously from increasing trade on aggregate as competition increases, and many promising jobs opportunities created in the export sector reflecting to the wages of workers in importing competing industries that may have to suffer losing their jobs. Number three, creating a sustainable environment. The environment will promote the research and development for environmentally friendly but also resource-efficient technologies, which helps promoting investments in more green industries. Next, the solution may lead to a decreased land and environmental degradation for economic development activities. Other than that, it will also help to preserve Brunei's environment and develop green initiatives that can contribute to the economic growth. Conclusion. Economic growth processes and key macroeconomics policies depend on the key growth sectors in the national economy, important as policy impetus for related growth and can automatically impact interconnected sectors through both forward and backward relationship and can improve on the manifold growth prospects. Malaysia is ranked 55th out of 157 countries. Malaysia needs to further advance in the field of education, health, and nutrition as well as social protection. The economy for Brunei is the 62nd most independent in the 2022 index, ranked 9th among 39 countries in the Asian region Pacific, and the overall score is above the regional and world average. That's all. Thank you.